Ever found yourself quick to judge someone because they acted a little different? We all have, but today, let us explore why. Isn't it curious how our minds instinctively put things into boxes and label them? It's a simple survival mechanism, really, a way for us to quickly make sense of the world. But when it comes to mental health, this tendency can create barriers and build stigmas. You see, mental health is not black and white, and it certainly doesn't fit neatly into any box. It's a vast spectrum of experiences, emotions, and challenges that cannot be summed up by a single label. Today, we're going to delve deep into the role of psychology in breaking down these barriers and overcoming the stigmas surrounding mental health. There's a lot to learn, a lot to unlearn, and a lot to relearn. As we delve into this, remember that understanding is the first step to acceptance. Mental health isn't just about being crazy. It's a spectrum, a universal experience that we all share. Let's delve deeper into this topic. Mental health isn't a black and white issue. It's a spectrum that ranges from optimal mental well-being to severe mental disorders. This spectrum is something we all experience at different points in our lives. Just as our physical health fluctuates, so too does our mental health. It's a part of our human experience. Now imagine a rainbow, each color representing a different mental state. Some days we might feel like radiant reds or optimistic oranges. Other times we could be feeling more like subdued blues or gloomy grays. Each color is valid, each color is human. There's a wide range of mental disorders, from common ones like depression and anxiety, to more severe conditions like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. Each of these conditions is a different color on our mental health spectrum. They're all part of the human condition, and none of them make someone less worthy of respect or less deserving of compassion. Now let's talk about stigma. Stigma is a mark of disgrace, a label that society places on something it doesn't understand. The stigma around mental health has deep roots in our history. It stems from fear, misunderstanding, and cultural norms that have long equated mental illness with weakness or moral failure. This stigma can be incredibly harmful. It can prevent people from seeking help, isolate those who are struggling, and even lead to self-stigma, where individuals internalize these negative beliefs about themselves. The impact of stigma is far-reaching and can be just as damaging as the mental health issue itself. But here's the thing, stigma is a wall. It's an obstacle that stands in the way of understanding, empathy, and progress. But like any wall, it can be broken down. It starts with understanding mental health and recognizing that it's a universal experience. It continues with challenging our own biases and attitudes, and it culminates with empathy, with seeing the person behind the mental health issue, not just the issue itself. Stigma is a wall, but with understanding and empathy, we can break it down. Our brains are wired to categorize, but sometimes this leads us to stigmatize. Why is that? Let's start by unpacking the concept of stereotyping. Stereotypes are simplified and generalized views about a group of people based on certain characteristics they share. When it comes to mental health, stereotypes often paint an inaccurate and negative picture, leading to stigma. For instance, someone with a mental health condition might be unfairly labeled as unstable or dangerous. Next, we delve into the concept of in-group bias. This is our inherent tendency to favor those who belong to the same group as us. It could be based on nationality, race, or even shared interests. When it comes to mental health, people without mental health issues often constitute the in-group, and those with conditions are seen as the out-group. The result? Stigma, discrimination, and the marginalization of those with mental health conditions. Now let's talk about the fear of the unknown, a fundamental human trait. This fear can lead us to view anything unfamiliar or different with suspicion or even hostility. Mental health issues, due to their complex and often misunderstood nature, fall into this category of the unknown for many. This fear can foster stigma, as people might distance themselves from those with mental health conditions out of ignorance or misunderstanding. Each of these psychological processes, stereotyping, in-group bias, and fear of the unknown, contributes to the formation of stigma in its own way. They create an environment where people with mental health conditions are misunderstood, feared, and marginalized. But by understanding these processes, we can begin to break down the barriers they create. The key is education and awareness. By challenging stereotypes, promoting inclusivity over in-group bias, and demystifying the unknown of mental health, we can help reduce stigma. It's about fostering understanding, empathy, and respect for all, regardless of their mental health status. Understanding the root of stigma allows us to address it effectively. And this understanding is the first step towards a more compassionate and inclusive society where mental health is not a source of shame, but simply another aspect of the human experience. Psychology isn't just about understanding problems, it also offers solutions. One of the most significant battles we face in the realm of mental health is overcoming the stigma that surrounds it. Thankfully, the field of psychology doesn't just diagnose and dissect these issues. It also provides us with the tools to tackle them head-on. Let's explore how psychological principles like empathy, cognitive restructuring, and exposure therapy can help us break down these barriers. Firstly, empathy. This is the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. It's about stepping into someone else's shoes, seeing the world through their eyes. It's a fundamental principle of psychology, and it plays a crucial role in eroding the stigma around mental health. By fostering empathy, we encourage understanding and compassion. We start to see mental health not as an other to be feared and misunderstood, but as a part of the human experience. Next, let's talk about cognitive restructuring. This is a psychological technique that helps us to change our patterns of thinking. It's often used in therapy to help individuals deal with negative thoughts and beliefs, but it can also be a powerful tool against stigma. Stigma is, at its core, a collection of harmful beliefs and stereotypes. Cognitive restructuring teaches us to challenge these, to question the unfounded assumptions we might have about mental health. By changing the way we think, we can change the way we perceive and treat mental health issues. Finally, there's exposure therapy. This is a therapeutic approach that involves gradually exposing individuals to the thing they fear or avoid. It's often used to treat phobias and anxiety disorders, but how does it help with stigma? Well, one of the main drivers of stigma is fear of the unknown. By encouraging conversations about mental health, by bringing these issues out into the open, we're effectively using exposure therapy on a societal level. We're helping people to become familiar with and understand mental health, which reduces fear and in turn stigma. It's important to remember that these principles aren't just for psychologists or therapists. They're tools that all of us can use in our everyday lives. Whether it's practicing empathy with a friend who's struggling, questioning our own biases, or starting a conversation about mental health, each one of us has the power to make a difference. Remember, the fight against mental health stigma isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. It requires consistent effort and understanding from all of us. But with the principles of psychology in our toolkit, we're well equipped to take on this challenge. Psychology gives us the tools we need to dismantle the barriers of stigma. We've explored the roots of stigma and psychology's role in overcoming it, so what's next? In our journey today, we've taken a deep dive into the concept of mental health and the stigmas that surround it. We've learned that these stigmas are not simply superficial judgments, but deeply ingrained biases that are often perpetuated by society. We've also looked at the psychology behind these stigmas, understanding how they are formed and how they affect individuals. From stereotypes to prejudices, we've seen how these negative attitudes can lead to discrimination and social exclusion. But most importantly, we've discovered how psychology can help in overcoming these stigmas. By promoting empathy, education, and open conversations, we can change the narrative around mental health. We've seen that psychological principles can not only help individuals understand and manage their own mental health, but also empower them to challenge stigmas and support others. But why is this important? Why should we care about breaking down mental health stigma? Well, the answer is simple. It's about human well-being. Stigma can prevent people from seeking help, leading to worsening symptoms and even life-threatening situations. It isolates individuals, making them feel misunderstood and alone. It's a barrier to the happiness and fulfillment of countless individuals around the world. But it's not just about individuals. Stigma also affects society as a whole. It perpetuates harmful myths and misunderstandings, fuels discrimination, and hinders progress in mental health care. By breaking down stigma, we can create a more compassionate, understanding, and inclusive society. So what can we do? We can start by educating ourselves and others. We can challenge our own biases and speak up against stigma. We can support those struggling with their mental health and advocate for mental health care. Remember, every action counts. Even the smallest act can make a difference. Whether it's a kind word, a shared story, or a simple act of empathy, your actions can help to break down barriers and change lives. Change starts with understanding. Let's be the change, and let's start today.